trim function. The trim function is much like the left and right trim functions. By default, trim will trim an expression and it will trim spaces from the beginning and the end of the expression. It can also be used to, say, trim leading character from expression or trim trailing character from expression, which is exactly the same as left and right trim respectively. Both will trim all characters from an expression from the beginning and the end of the string. Let's look at some examples of the trim function. Let's go back to the first one. What we've done here is we've trimmed everything from the string. By default, it will trim both from the beginning and the end. As you can see, we've removed the spaces from the beginning and the spaces from the end of the string. The default trim character is a space. The second example trims the leading spaces from "this is a string" and gives me "this is a string with spaces." This left trim function actually does exactly the same thing as select trim leading spaces from "this is a string." As you can see, the result is the same. Here I've used select trim leading space from, and here I've used select left trim. The next example is to trim the trailing characters, trailing blanks from spaces, "this is a string," spaces, and I get "this is a string" with all the leading space characters and no trailing space characters. Exactly the same thing can be done with the right trim character, removing spaces from the same string, and we get the same result as we do with select trim trailing characters from the string, as in spaces, "this is a string," and no trailing blanks. The last form of the trim function is to trim both. In other words, trim not only leading or trailing, but both leading and trailing characters from the string. The result is the string, "this is a string," with no leading space characters and no trailing space characters. The last function we will look at is the upper function. Exactly the same thing as the lower function, except the opposite way around. All you do is you pass a string through upper and it converts every single character to an uppercase character. So, an example of upper would be to take the name from the category field and pass it through the upper function. So here we have tennis converted to uppercase, and theatre, etc., etc. Now let's take a look at one or two interesting examples which combine functions. We won't get too complicated at this stage, but let's just try one or two. What this example does is it uses the replace function to replace a front slash in the category name field with the word space and space. So instead of country front slash folk, we actually get country and folk. Let's restructure that statement a little so that we can see exactly what's going on here. From the category, where we actually had a where clause that only retrieved category names which had the front slash in them, and we used the in-string function to verify that the name field had the front slash. So that's why we only found 6 rows. Let's run this statement again. Now we can see we have country slash folk replaced with country and folk, etc., etc. Here's an even more complex example. What are we doing here? We've got multiple instantiations of different functions: substring, in-string, length, and in-string. Typically the substring function is used to do some odd things and extract parts of strings based on the lengths of strings and characters within those strings. In this case, what I've done is I've gone and found all names in the category table with the front slash, and I've found the word after the front slash. So here what I did was I said select substring from the name field in the category table, from the position of the first occurrence of the front slash, plus 1 because it starts at 0 and substring starts at 1. And then I said for the length of the entire category name, and I subtract the position of the front slash character. So what I do is I say take the substring of the name from this front slash for the length of this name, subtract this position. So I actually extract the word folk from country/folk, and there we have folk.